Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Ultra Peak Mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "How should a son of a lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom?" Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Sharadvati Putra with these words: "Shariputra, those men and women of a lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight, and so on, until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasam gate bodhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Kando sibi tsara mare me don don gen che zhe rozo gyala buji da ze yan la chu ju yang de song rodo je ro ni mo ni lo de je cha ru zhu ze ji mare me ze don gen yo go che ni chu ze re ro no Bien da je sa je da sun yin bien le zu yo se du ye guo je zha je da je ni je da le me se jiang yang la de o a ra ba sa na de o a ra ba sa na de Arabazana Seden Chuji Chira Ze Dali Dimu Miba Rasene Kadan Dinju Junglu Doba Lo Zhe Bobe No Lo 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 导演作业人我公约送，马列写着之间随便读，小军做我的那所望的，突厥前部的些多杰强，就在德罗巴东那罗巴，边就周边巴东阿的上，两年新老就那所望的。上波东面一年当着的，秋天的月的当着边边，线上各上六年四年吧，了解学别就那所望的，两人月面兄弟都着呢，那我这把这边不着急。上界观众泡泡要塞说，上梦大业结了说我的，记住当别穷忙的上，嘎当点别面包周的节，念就那些过去说那说，嘎当那么那说我的。康健现的世界中国，我到这边我说的早点，老天边到不开主的，要是绝不接了说我的，要中国的老妈多的长，看了光的些年最多的。就当天幕幕主存在的，只见那么那所望的，让将所着跟了到眼面，给上他把这边就我就，在人这边他看在把眼，现在新年那了所望的。叫我更多养到那么多，这边却见遍了落雪天，早当浪迹也得着做的，多觉强干过，牛多有三界，就当做的就当的，想求不多当年就做的。大概切切这边所能见，到了平些上界，如不修上界就，做界就能想求不多当年就做。大概切切这边所能见，到了平些上界，如不修上界。这当作业就能拿想出我的当年就做，大概几件这边错难的，罗罗平时上年如果有，哎呀，啊，当时通常你那小娃呢，通过沟通就吧，因此呢，那沟通就吧，是那家里切的了，呢，就让给90年，就让从给90年这个是老玩意了，那他啊，所以这个觉得对吧？前边确认在呢，那让些时间他就等做的上级就公公他给我都不理解的，那个去年这个也是的，当年把都不愿意。
Whenever we engage it in the practice of Dharma, or particularly the listening to the teachings of the Dharma, there are two activities or something that is very important, activities in the beginning and activities at the end. So activity in the beginning here refers to the cultivation of right motivations of receiving the teachings. And as we are the follower of the Mahayana Buddha Dharma, and we are listening to the teachings of the Mahayana Buddha Dharma, so therefore, one's motivation must be imbued with the cultivation of awakening minds. But such as my sole purpose of listening to these teachings of the Mahayana Dharma is to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. So this is the inevitable motivations which is required for us to cultivate as a Mahayana practitioner. So here for that, we should visualize as an object of refuge Buddha in the space at the level of one's forehead, surrounded by all those lineage gurus of Lam Rim Chenmo.
아니 지 상바양 뭐지 또 루버 차디디라고 지네 되네 근데 렌 차바세 버라 렌 차바라고 지기 토네 아니 지 상추 생이 생발라 아니 미나치를 되네 상추 생과인 자네 근데 라지 선제 당지 아니 대화대 주 동해면대 봐 지바인 봐 가시질을 대화 좀 미시네 아시 인터넷 지레도 아까 당에 뭐네 나도기네 철라 투비치시네 다 마로랑기 지제네 선제되다 조별 사실 고마라 터터 지금에 제가 인다서네 니지 선제 가가 미워 수비도네 아니 상추 생이 미나 강 유지
So here, being yourself in the presence of the object of refuge, and not only that yourself, but yourself is again surrounded by all other sentient beings without exception. And think about that, when speaking about motivations imbued by awakening minds, and then when the awakening mind is not just may I gain state of enlightenment for the benefit of other sentient beings, but rather one should have an object to whom you think of, leading to the state of enlightenment. The object is sentient beings. Entire sentient beings will be object of one's awakening mind. So therefore, now at this point, I myself have and such a wonderful opportunity to understand what is to be abandoned and what is to be adapted. So therefore, it is based on my own knowledge. I will not just use this my own knowledge just for myself, my own benefit, but all benefit for all other sentient beings. So it is therefore just all other sentient beings have a similar wish as I do to achieve happiness and overcome sufferings. So therefore, I will take this responsibility to overcome the suffering of all other sentient beings, leading them to state of enlightenment. So in order to stabilize such motivations, let's take a couple of minutes to meditate.
아야, 어떤 제인데. 뭐 수준은 저이나 상추기 선의 돈이도 별로 생긴데 강요디 유급이 내지다 튕기도 못 다오라. 유급이 내지다 튕기면은 유시하는 마도 다들 되게 말어. 근데 가르치는 거 내지다 튕기로.
So when speaking about practicing or meditating on emptiness and bodhicitta, so what is important for us to understand is one's meditation on emptiness and bodhicitta is something that really corresponds to reality. That is what we should understand, right? If one's meditation, such as emptiness and bodhicitta, if that practice of meditation doesn't really correspond to reality, then it is not, it is not appropriate, or it is not relevant to really to practice and meditate.
그렇지. 나 동반이 이거 동반이 이제 거리시에서는 뭐 내지다 튕기면 배치 증세 배제여 말이야. 다 몬치와데 세우다 체리 버성이 정원으로서는 체리 버성으로 되게 쉬고 쉬지만 로도 소도아. 돈이 동반이 이제 거리시나.
So if you have a proper understanding of what is meant by emptiness, then most probably your understanding and your meditation and emptiness will really correspond to the reality. So it is therefore His Holiness often talks about, even the scientists, when speaking about emptiness or ultimate nature of reality, they are very delighted and showing a insatiated sort of interest in understanding of emptiness.
那想就生意过了西用的申请银行出现的申请考察执照把的记了给这些呢执照把的就已经上这的嘛的是吧就等这笔经常人呢就可以用给这不要有个的就可以用给这不多少个的 아니 단답을 강에 온데 가려운 게 해기도 아니 메시비 온게 해기도 신의 해기도 아니 된주지기 선체 코너 인간질로 상나도 선체들 시에게 토제도 도면도 시에인데 저와 라진질 해서 말이야.
So now when it comes to the meditation or the practice of bodhicitta, for this then one should think about the suffering nature of sentient beings. If you look at the beings who are undergoing sufferings, the sufferings are not coming into being from nowhere. It has its own causes and conditions. And it is without having a proper understanding of what is appropriate actions that is to be taken, which give rise to an appropriate result. So beings are completely ignorant of not having a proper understanding of action that leads to the happiness. So therefore, when you think in this way, you automatically generate a sense of caring and sense of connectedness with all other sentient beings.
뜻을 따지죠래. 나보다 가서 천대기 대지 지고기 투근도 면도 델레신베 대지 거사를 거사 말에 천대 대지 때 타투기 대화를 면도 뜻을 신주 제선나 천대기 대지기 천하원이 강사 뭔가지 자신지 코딩이 지에 의비네츠레 통해지어와. 대 통선은 저와데 해오라마 좀 메데 단지본도 메데 지기도 세데 다가랑이 저기야나 저와 그에서 키면도.
So now here the question is that now is that happiness, when we speak about happiness, just happiness of this present life alone, that this life alone, if this is something that we think is adequate, something that we consider as ultimate state of happiness, then we don't have to go further, right? But if you really, understand and you believe and happiness is not just for this life alone, but we also have a genuine aspiration to achieve happiness in the future life, then we have to think differently, right? We have to think differently. So therefore, at this point, all other sentient beings who are remaining under the power of this, mistaken thought or mistaken understanding of reality, which leads them to engage in the mistaken actions, which enables them to accumulate negative causes and conditions, which give rise to sufferings. This is the chain of sufferings, how it actually produces from one after another. So when you have such understanding, then you will have, it is conducive of generating compassion and sense of caring for other beings.
다 된저기 상주기 산르보전다 동반이 주스주고 나마나와데 상주랑지레바 될라 자이 사정원도 세메시 아니 죽은 쯤바 땜비신 제바 비쳐와 당나라 기바지비시 추주쳐와 쳐와니도 땜비쳐는 예시제다샤와 담방거저 나마제다 저이리바스 아니 나마
So therefore the unmistaken path of emptiness and bodhicitta, which is taught in this great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, or the Changchu Lamki Rinpa. And in order to follow this text, and the text begins from the four major outlines, such as the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings as a noble source, showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender the respect for the teachings, the greatness of the enabling one to know that all of the teachings are free from contradictions, and the greatness of enabling one to understand that all of the scriptures are instruction for the practice. So then this will then be followed by the two other important subdivisions of this outline, are how to rely on the teachers, which is the root of one's spiritual path. This will then be followed by how the students train their mind after having relied on spiritual teacher. rangi sanje jume bashiba parashima lozeda jeji jume bashiba diyo ngoba jala lozeji ta diyo no ringa zoe ne shangju ye sanru mochi jie ne yudongi jese ji shoba lozela parashima juda diyo ngoba jie yubi no ne parashima ju diyi parashima ju ge no ne shiraji parashima lozezi bozo boba saji. So we're on the particular chapter out of 6 perfections. We're on the how to train in the perfection of wisdom.
나서이나 가디나 장으로 가디도 손대 때려 모대 이콘치고 맞아 모대 매져와 라니 가디나 좀 받지 전에 rani ji sheba chi che so na ani yen ye yang de do ma re rang chu tempo to ne ani nang ju ji be je tu res yang de so so na rani le che yong cha me na ta xie me wa de ye de gang na da de de ka za de de shi ro su ba la zong ba xia song do a
long.
ta ma de lo de nge de ka ji de de chi la ni zhong
That's all. So here we are on this the physical chapter, which is the page 215. Oh, 217, sorry. Page 217. What are the cause of confusions? Rinpoche wants to go back to the 2 lines before this paragraph. It says, therefore, with all power at your disposal, work hard at the method for producing such wisdom. What that really entails us, it actually suggests us to not to really follow a blind faith, but rather cultivate a discernment or wisdom that one should learn and understand and determine and have a proper learning which leads oneself, which leads to the discernment. So with discernment, then your mind or your understanding and your belief will not be influenced by any other powers, regardless of how powerful that may be. Because if you are not having that, just by believing and having a blind faith, then you have no power over it at all. You will be influenced by any other powers. So therefore, discernment is something that is very important. For that, you need to study and sharpen your intellect.
당하서 싫어게 드메된 밤에 투미데 가리 온데 로서 모비 온데 로데로 모비 온데 로이 모비기 지데 가르져서 나와이 나서도
So then here now, what is the cause of not, what really prevents us from illuminating the lamp of wisdom, or in other words, the light of wisdom, is the ignorance, or it is also called confusions. So this is the ignorance is the one that really prevents us from illuminating the lights of wisdom.
안되지 또 모비 전에 선도 템바 템바 당 레로 당 뇨레 당 니체와 당 소소 도진 쇼발라 메가와 자첨볼라 메메바다 미시젠데 시소와냐 빙아제당 로타체와당 다다에 미니 냐도 쇼네 케바 템발라 메가와 인데 레 알레 인데에서 니도 치루 인사래.
So now here, let's follow the text. What are the causes of confusion? It says they are relying on the bad friends, laziness, indolence, oversleeping, taking no pleasure in analysis and discernment, lack of interest in the vast variety of phenomena. The pride of thinking, I know when you do not, the major wrong views and being discouraged, and thinking someone like me cannot do this, and thus not taking pleasure in relying upon the learned.
되지. 다 되시는데 다 맞sol라 현재주요. 다 현재에서 그러. 별 현재지. 뭐 이제 되다 맞sol라 현재주요로 다 나가시주요. 그래서 강강 맞sol는 zon들.
This kind of quality is within us innately.
dakmane tone chene chune chenge yana disi tedela gasha tone disi kane ani shiro ju deme de batu chegro ta ngazo koso da kamba jene nyando rodo redi mala de je dedo.
So we as a practitioners now, all of this, the above mentioned, above mentioned the qualities that are relying on the bad friends, laziness, and so on and so forth, must be abandoned. we should look at them as something that is to be abandoned as a practitioner.
Tishi da tiki tsilu kasa chiche tere doa lelo nyo da tengi tenpa tang nyi tang onjo me to ngang tsi tang tupi yi she cho la me me tang lopi nga ji nyo be duen ji tang ma sen da la shenpa jung yi jir kepi jiwo tenpa ma de tang lopi na to du chen lo ta ta timu jun yi she son so tena son doa.
So here it says now, the compendium of perfection says, laziness, indolence, and reliance on the bad friends, being governed by sleep, no feeling for discernment, no interest in sages' most sublime wisdom, incurring under the influences of false pride, and lacking the faith to rely upon a learned persons due to attachment, self-fulfilling of inadequacy, the great passion of false concept, which are wrong views. These are the causes of confusions.
다 되세 노는 가 가래 베나 조경 봐서 양 쳐서기 지 미신 강사신 다 진행 문제 쉬우잖아 대도 문제가 있잖아 지금 말해서 양지 메시지 토통다 매대 마비체에서 된게 개체 문제 왔지 그러와 맞소게 싫어 좀에 랑지를 제와라 개체 생에 때라 아니 가장 문제잖아 인지 미주 코 두자를 스피드 개체 말해 아니 랑지를 싫어도 제비게 토들 제체 위해서나 아니 세용게 라니 코당 제제자동라 터시동아 요래와.
So here now, when we speak about the bad friends, so you should not understand the bad friends as someone you should look at as other person as a bad person, or you should have one should not have a contemptuous attitude towards such person. This is not what is suggested here, right? What is meant by bad friend is if something that becomes an obstacle for generating wisdom, as we spoke earlier, the illuminating the light of wisdom. It really is. If there's someone or something or any situation, not only a person, which actually prevents us from illuminating one's light of wisdom, and one should look at this as an object of refutation. And so it is not necessarily that you're treating that person badly, but rather look at this as an object of refutation. One should be refuted. That is what is meant by. So here, one will not be fooled when speaking about the digdo, which literally means a sinful friend. Digdo, sinful friend. Sinful friend doesn't really mean that someone who comes with horns and tails and so forth. Rather, someone who will come to you and in a very friendly manner, with a smiling and very fervently, and it approach you, and then you will be deceived. So therefore, we have to remain as very vigilant.
푸기 된다 태완라 아니 쟁게쟁 간데도 다네 아니 냥lenche 시와 된죄체 다 되노는 가서 되니 레로다 니도 다 렌치 지여 봐지 지와지 다 되노는 가서 도시 가리 거선 데다가 투고 말해서는 라니를 숑바체 빼미세니 인종이 뭐 쉬지레 가르선에 되게 종도 자체다 그러와 또 선제 다지 된두고디 단단히 카도데 시에서나다 투야 코노면도.
So here now, laziness, indolence, reliance upon a bad friend, and so on. We are, it is always with us most of the time. But then also there's one thing that is always with us is that the self-contempt is always with us. Because whenever we go through this vast teachings, such as Lam Rim Chenmo and so forth, and when you look at the volume, and this has a numerous volumes, I don't think the person like me will not be able to do that. So this is, again, will really become obstacles for or the unfavorable condition for development of spiritual realizations.
Wana ta kante chegor sena chiro tanchi de jute meko kante zogor sena de na asa yo lama rindo kyuti de shiro jushe toba zewa sha je somba ta keba tene nipa tan timbi toba re shago de ta mena toba le shunwa ta samba le shunyi shiro mechela de ta na jishi gang mishibi shedang toba shana de yu den sangde 상주기 싫어 제라 텔레 건주기 싫어 양바 용이 싫어 손도 됐더니 그래 대양 손도.
So then here it's a how do we then dispel the cause of confusion? What is the method and skillful means of dispelling this cause of confusion? And here it says, therefore, as a compendium of perfection says, serve and venerate a guru worthy of trust and steady to achieve wisdom. Once you rely on a learned person, you must study in accord with your capacity. For if you do not, you will not produce the wisdom that arises from study and the wisdom that arises from reflection. Wisdom you will not know what is meditated upon. And if you do study, you will produce the wisdom that arises from reflection by thinking over the meaning of what you have studied. And from this, you will gain vast wisdom what arises from meditations.
안되지. 또 도서 야보지 신주 만제나 가서 땡요 받다 남아 땡거 세디 인지 미지 가서 돌로 세보 가면지 이게 토통되지 상당히 먹어야지. 땡요 비 개겐데 수수 개겐데 땡 개겐데 땡네 아니 토바제 그 개겐 토발라 알리 녀고로 고고래 고발라 또 송해지 고로 된주기 토바 때문에 토바 만화와지 때 만화와 때비 되더니 상바 때문에 강조기 싫어지 제소나 아니 뭐네 랑이 정신 오는 거샤로.
So here then it says, when speaking about serve and venerate a guru worthy of trust, that doesn't really necessary to rely upon a guru who's an ordained member, who's wearing a bhikshus, monk, robes and so forth, but someone who has a adequate qualifications, ample qualifications of Dharma to give the teachings is said to be the guru, someone who is worthy of trust. That is what is here is referring to. So once you have relied upon such a qualified teacher, then one need to listen to the teachings, unmistaken teachings given by the qualified gurus. By means of listening to the unmistaken teachings, will be able to generate wisdom of hearing, then wisdom of contemplation, and that led to the wisdom of meditation and so forth. So once you're able to go through all those in a very proper manner or the proper sequence, then you will be always on the right path. In other words, to the state of enlightenment, right path to the state of enlightenment.
되게 내가 최초에 이런 거 중에 가르쳐 볼 때서나 인지 미지 미시비 메바세와나 셰고를 셰발라 토고를 인지 미지 토바제쇼서네 내가 최초에 대성을 토바제발라 투비 대등인데 만원하게 이게 지거로와 마도 지 인정부터 시행되는데 그래서 지금 말어와.
So therefore his Lama Tsongkhapa has in over and over again stated that one must understand, one must know the teachings of the Dharma, understand the teachings of the Dharma. In order to understand, one should listen to the teachings of the Dharma from the qualified teacher who actually gives the unmistaken meanings of the teachings. Otherwise, if one just look at and someone who is very elegant and speaking and so forth, if you keep relying on someone as an authentic teacher and just following that, who are unable to express the actual meaning of the teachings of the Dharma, then we might go we might lead towards a wrong path. So therefore, we have to be careful with that.
Tunyu Milon Gambi Tsumishi, Deme Deko Jishi Sambasha, Deye Tula Tsunja Dejule, Sanjin Gambi Shiro Yamba Jung Sheso, Jize Shambe Jang Sondwa, Dede Tuba Kechimboima.
So then here it talks about how important it is for us to listen to the teachings from the teachings from a qualified teacher, where it says the glorious Ayasura says, little study is like a blindness. He says, you do not know how to meditate. Without study, what could dare to be reflect upon? Therefore, from the cause of making an effort to study, you meditate in accord with the reflection, and thereby gain vast wisdom.
Teaching us on your tennis over Jim Malaiso, Tuba may be gamba de la don't challenge Zaba Shensen. Laba Mena challenge to a Yamaro, Tuba Mena Ganja Yamada so.
So therefore, we have have a saying, very popular saying. It is actually by the Jesu Milaruva, where he has stated that without having listened to the teachings and try to meditate, it's like someone who is handless is trying to climb a rocky mountain.
She saw Jizen Shambe Jang, Koson number Tobata, Denny Mishi, Denny Shiji Jubat de Sena Lasso Nando Kang, Denny Nemo Jubat de Shera Legend Dedani, Panju Jeme, Deisha, Shera Chune, Dejine, Tuba Desh, Tuba Chu, Jason so, Lotile Jang, so.
So then the Venerable Master also says in the Sublime Continuum, the conceptualization of the three spheres are asserted to be the cognitive obscurations, while conceptualizations such as stinginess and the like are asserted to be the effective obscurations. So slowly the wisdom is the cause of their eliminations, nothing else. So wisdom is the supreme. Study is its basis. So study is supreme.
당어서 대진 용다 전대로와 변화 최탕제 센나리 코소나바도 센나리 최탕제 대항 신도 타위 대항 센나리 덴반탕 이차til에 시디자 아니 텔레젠베게 아니 덴진다 센나로 소바다 뉴질레자 아니 데니 빵게 되라 아니 돈유도 베셔로레 젠베게 주요 말에 인자는 돈유도 베셔로 초대랑지레 집이 단도 아니 토바체고레 손도와.
So here now we have two obscurations which obstruct us from gaining state of enlightenment, right? So here in this particular verses, where the verses, as it says, the conceptualization of the three spheres are asserted to be the cognitive obscurations, right? While the conceptualizations such as stinginess and the like are asserted to be the effective obscurations. So what is the direct remedy, or what actually overcomes such obscurations, is the wisdom realizing emptiness. So wisdom realizing emptiness is something that is very important. It is a sublime method of overcoming those two obscurations.
Then Nas never shall, Nyamba Jala Zun Shashin, Xie Song Las, Di Rangre Lejang, Monsieur Banet Joa, Na, so many be share, Tubala Soba, Zumba Nyamba Jishin, Tuba Dam Meden Bene, something jet taught down, Numamba numbers jam with talk, Jang, Michete, Diana. There na joa maybe tuba zewa sha xie dang, simi ale xie dang, simi jiba le jiang so de. 第三这你的长上去的。
So here now, the Chatideva's contemplation of trainings in verse. It says it's Siksa Samucha Karika. This is contemplation of trainings. It says be forbearing and then steady, and steady in a forest, and then persevere at meditative equipoise. So his auto commentary, the compendium of trainings of this says, with impatience you become disheartened and cannot bear, so your perseverance at study, etc., decline. And without study, you do not know the means for either meditative stabilization or for clearing away the afflictions. Therefore, without becoming disheartened, study.
되게 된다 가서 송월세 되래. 지당 가서 동네에 가서 강에라 쪼알을 서투 말아와스. 지면서 봤을 때 뒤질래서 그래. 얘는 투바집이 된다라. 아니 저거래. 저여 버려 송월. 깔리 저여 봐.
So therefore, normally it is for us when we have to put in a lot of efforts and hardships, it is something that we cannot bear. We cannot be patient enough to put in effort and go through those hardships and so forth. But for what we need to do is whatever the effort that we may have met, and the patience, it is all worthwhile in this particular in the context of practicing Dharma, because it is we are actually we are in pursuit of gaining ultimate state of happiness. So therefore, whatever the hardship that may need to undertake, it is worthwhile to undertake the hardships and put in efforts.
타마데도아 대는 쪼하면 투바세와 샤세디 좀 투바데 쪼하로와 인자네 저바제네 아니 투바데 제쇼 소야지로와 투바 개체모에 송와.
Therefore, without becoming disheartened, steady. One should not remain disheartened, but steady.
写当去스메지비 슈바 레장 데타 리지부 투바단 데나 셔러종한 저로 셔러단 데나 뇨모바로도 뇨로도 쇼한 저로 뇨모바 메나 메발라 디젤라 미니 또 시소소 송도 들도이노.
So here now, and then also the questions of Narayana of formula, or Narayana Prajapraja Dharma, Dharani also says, just so child of good lineage, if you study, wisdom will come. If you are possessed of wisdom, the afflictions will be stilled. Once you have no afflictions, demons do not have a chance with you.
딱 귤레 제거고야나 아니 싫어 제거래 싫어 제발라 토바 그래 데로와.
In order to develop wisdom or increase wisdom, in other words, we need to increase our listening to the teachings of the Dharma.
되지. 문에 저는 가서 변되지 않는 데로와 변아 난칸노네야 같이야 로소나 마통되지로 대나게 싫어 좀 주면데 봐서나 용수 줘봐 묘데 쓰는 통되게 지차야죠. 지
Just like
강에 가요 봐 녀라 가요 봐 통되지.
just like when you lift in the air, or you just climb at high mountains, so you're able to gaze at all this entire panorama, and it is under your eyesight. So you're able to gaze entire panorama. In the same manner, if you have a wisdom by wisdom derived from listening and reflections, then you are able to see everything. It's just like you are seeing entire panorama from the very high mountain.
대단한 송도한테 추신의 두번 더번 나나스 런지 소 담바 추러도 남지지 싫어제비 줄라나 매바 주마메비 소러당 땡줄라만도 토바 고소 셰로더 리베 주장 알레 고소하지 알레 디바드 지로르제다.
So therefore, it says the scriptures and reasoning establish the following: those who wish to properly practice the teachings need a broad study of the stainless scripture and their commentaries, and unexcelled cause that give rise to the wisdom which thoroughly distinguish phenomena, which is the secret life force of the path.
안되지. 다 속에 단단 가서 네기 뒤에들 때마 돼 온데잖아. 다 든주기 지면 시바지 매버서 지 댄서 지고로 다콩 속에 지 나바 산제베 깨지 지고 메시아 잖아. 다 신주 쟁에 오늘 지 로소 내뭐지 신주 제와이나 다 신주 지 제고 다 신주 제서나 다 속에 남비 존에시나 도송도아 아니 제와라 주마메빌로 송로당 땡줄라 제고를 예송도아 주마 maybe sonro da tenjela chewala 주마 maybe ripachi jesanrane joguro tingye pa de goro.
So here now it says importance of the properly practice, those who wish to properly practice the teachings need a broad studies of the stainless scriptures and their commentaries, right? So therefore, if one listen to the stainless scriptures and their commentaries, what happens to us as a result? One will be able to generate a stainless, reasonings or the rationales. If you have stainless rationale or the reasonings, one will be able to understand the stainless of how things really are.
튼주치 고바 de londa repa ninga yi dugo res yina yang so do repe du chang de goba du nyo de mi du ban de ne nyo le ji so so to bi shero ji she gong goba la nye ba ma nye ji me goba du nyo bi shi jin lo gi nye ba ba shi ki chen yin be da le sun de be ne de do wa de du yin de Bamba 샤오 송도 대중 가서 제로무치기 양스 대슈 송으로 리피진 장고에.
So here again, the Lama Tsongkhapa emphasizes how important it is for us to really to follow the reasonings, not only just a faith, follow the reasonings, and one's understanding must be based on sound reasonings. So here it says, however, not achieving wisdom while thinking that a broad study is necessary to develop it. It is simply the fault of your not being conceived that you need the analytical meditation of discerning wisdoms when the time comes for practice, and of having the mystic and conviction that the analytical meditation is not necessary. Therefore, those of you who want what is best for yourself should eliminate such mystic and convictions, as though getting rid of poisons.
Tande ngaso khatu do shena ta bela peche sanje ki temba tane zon de peche yere senen ringen de chise ta kanje nyale je tsala soso to be shero chawa yesona gang chu do gore senge je ne thapa ina sege ta karsa ti jana hashen ke se na de seta I dana dare ni chai thabe dana dare se de tende ki tawa de mushu ji so ne ti tanda pa ye bare do je kanje biji na tele senere ye bare do.
So such, view of not not emphasizing importance of wisdom of discernment is still existed in the Buddhist tradition in Tibet, still in the Tibetan Buddhist traditions, although it has been rejected right from the beginning, such as the view of Hashang's standpoints, and also there are some who actually claims that if you are putting an effort to cultivate this wisdom of discernment, will actually interrupt your meditations. Therefore, you will not be able to be on the path to liberations. There are some mistaken instructions are given. So, so such instruction should not be followed. We need this wisdom of discernment. Wisdom of discernment can be cultivated by following the reasonings.
다 가서 내가 제시한테 가르쳐나 지 조건 장바게 야전도 할게 말이야. 로 템포 차나야 야전도 해야 말어. 진조 손대 집에 돈에 아니 신내도 진도게 있어나 아니 강을 비빠잖아. 유대기 세나다 뭐버시에도 차고로 와. 투바면은 뭐버시에면 뭐버시에면은 강그 말에 근데 코는 이 그도 손에 찍고 된다나 신내 루시 그래다 신내게 이 통사의 유도 뭐버 매명이 차고로 와.
So here now just single-pointed meditation, emphasizing on single-pointed meditation alone will not be able to, free ourselves from the bondage, right? Single-pointed meditation and analytical meditation must go in hand. It should go alternately. Once if meditation, single-pointed meditation may enables one to achieve calm abiding, but just achieving calm abiding will not lead oneself not free oneself from this bondage. So, in order to free oneself to the bondage, that your practice of calm abiding must impute it by wisdom realizing what is how things really are. In other words, wisdom realizing ultimate nature of reality.
맞춰 계전에 시는 변은 대신만 달라서 주로 간여로 와카 마셔게 신의 집어 강대는 가리 연구를 나서나 하소네 다 좀 내가 신의 전에 내적 가보러 와.
나름 신에게 손난다.
변은 대신 못 달라서 주로 와카 진의 쇼모닝이 강사지라 신의 주는 누구래서는 누구래 다때 간대치 차거리 해서나 맞춰 계전 한 번씩에서나 다 이쿠데서도 지마도 강사 그 야제 계긴 너무 많아.
That's all. So here now, if someone who just achieved calm abiding just by relying on the single-pointed meditations, without having any reflections on the 6 attributes of Four Noble Truths, 16 attributes of Four Noble Truths, and so forth, then if you were to ask such individual, what will this individual will achieve, after that, then there is not much answer to it. And it is just like you are actually having a very good night's sleep.
얘는 한번 세트 야 본다 당은 반사장이다 나도 가서 가지는 매장에 지금 물러는 로우 말아 로우 말에 마도 뭐네 잖아 신주 저거에 뺏게 참으로
So it is something that we really need to analyze. But then it is not that we are actually, we're talking badly about someone who is always meditating. This is not at all. The single-pointed meditation alone is not educate. That is what is meant by here. We need both single-pointed meditation and analytical meditations. Take a break here, 10 minutes.
Nejoba Chimbi Shene Sondo Jobasa Namba Tanje Chimbi Sanje Jobala Putin Zoki Sambala Shawa Majeba Lati Zangshi Lati Zambashi Demba Zu Demba Mare Bewa Zu Sheba Gayang Mishin Song Pichun Gabi Nga Sheshene Pena Jane Kuwa Jane Loba Shawa Yinbe Dawa Majung de la Shen Ha Xie La Chu Mi Xie Ba Xie Sewa Na Sena Jeta Xie Dang Song Shen Ha Yi Trabe Song Do Gadang Ba Zu Kung.
So let's follow through the text. Nejo Wachimpu said, Jehovah, when it comes to accomplishing the state of omniscient enlightenment, whether you show off or conceal that you studied only a handbook, you cannot get anywhere without reading a yak's lot of books. Bujungwa placed an open sacred text beside his pillow and said, you must learn the text. So even though you do not get a chance to read them, make a wish to read them all. If someone said that you should practice the teachings without understanding it, how would you do it?
Zhong Chenmo La Langni Chekar Mado Bene Ya Yin Zo Ke Mare Zo Yi Ke Zang Je Bote Mongbo Me Dawa Je Lati Zang La Menga Shene Gayin Shinga Ma Eso Ji Je.
So here, one second, it says now, just you must learn the text. It says text, whether you show off or the conceal that your studies only a handbook, or you cannot get anywhere without reading a yak lot of books.
Zhong Kabu Nga So in the Zhong Kabu Nga Sen, Da Kan Tendu Kecha Messia, and Zhong Chenmo Dosa, and again Lejan Shuyu, and Nigel Hojo Chess and a day, Kissy Hojo Jay to Semana, and the Balance in Shuyu on Chiris.
And here then Buchonwa placed an open sacred text beside his pillow and said, we must learn the text, so even though you do not get a chance to read them, make a wish to read them all.
Shanghai Trabe Bodo La Song. Luzon.
The Bodo was said 3 times to a monk, Changawa.
Teacher. Shanghai Bodo is Jietong Shibi, Duso, Jie Len Song Song Neso. I get not just Sako and Dawala, then the Yube, Jelan and Donchu Madame. Sandre Mashishi Ba Tamigoba Ne Lechung, Jinde Sambe Ne Lode Hajin Dele De Drew Mombone Sheta Sonsa Sharai Shene and Sondo.
Then Changao, who was escorting him a short distance, you're enjoying yourself too much. He then continued, you rely upon a teacher who is like the sky converting the earth. You do not slip it over other teachers, since you do not have to read the root text and their commentaries and mark their corresponding passage. You do not have a lot of work, and you are happy because you do not think about cause and effects while um, you work at certain activities by means of certain tantric practice, and you can satisfied with these many things.
tanda tanda reba tene jenda no da yi chimbi tando jile ja sha tanda maso ban rehe de chi jeda chi de se kecha khatu shebi so ne jong kwa so de kadam be de chi de se khaju kwa pe khabu do ko tanyen de beje do tanda se de yi chimbi tando ji de so do ko ron de la de tanda chen shi da no le shong de tama de la yi chimbi
So
jong chenmo la langjo da 다 가제 좀 처모에 냐뉴데 쇼네 아니 이 칩이 이 침비 되어서
So it is something that talks about, you have gone through a vast learning of the scriptures, so that you become satisfied with such studies and so on. But in the Kadamba's, if you look at the Kadamba's text, and most of the text has a very old term, the term that are hard to interpret and that are hard to explain and understand even in Tibetan as well. That's what Rinpoche said.
zonzo 다니마 베제도 메시 다 근제 카멘로지 덴도아 하진 덴 주바 몽보네 시 담비 되어서 이 침비 되어서 리시 되자요네 마도 녜카세 고 녜고알레 도제네 강코로라네 카도 고알레나야 지 가르사 야 현다진의 최최리베선 근데 마소이나 렌델라 산나스키 마토한테 데드비컬라 로데보라 렌데 동로로 산나도네 제데이나 랑게 제토 모보치라 산나도데 지 마제네 메디게선로 산나데 네바데 레그로 산나키 마토나 로데보체 데치야
So just think about
네도 고도레 대인사 말이다
all us. Rinpoche 대파시 콘도 쇼그르베.
데라다 네단데 렌데 마산반 로데싱이 지도아 네 고아텐데 렌데 가서 산나스키 마토나 로데보네 데드로 렌데게 산나지 제데 보다 편데 님이 산나도나 로데스케 메비 손지로 제동 소소 다 양래 영에서 로데보로
So although if you look at the commentaries in this Lam Rim has a different interpretations, but for my own side, my understanding is that in this particular paragraph is when you are not really reflecting on cause and effect, and everything that you do, that you think that you are doing the right thing, and you don't have much analysis. But if you really reflect very carefully on cause and effect, and have a proper understanding of cause and effect of the karma, then whatever we do, we are not really comfortable doing it because we have to be very careful with that. This is what I understand, my understanding from this particular paragraph.
델로 세네레 따다야도디 산제마 시시타 먹어봤네 레촌세데 존체만 하죠 자마가나 존체주체는 리그르셀라소나 갈레스케미오 레촌주로
So if you do not have to read or to study the root text and their commentaries to undertake our Dharma practice, then I think it is very easy, right?
temengi koate mareda tayi shende kasa ngaso geishenye sedeya yontenla jashana ngaso yana geishenye nagi sakawa ini lama tegi lama nagi sakawa nagi yore jerumo chege ini lama te nagi sakawa nagi yore sene sheno chero nagi sakawa nagi yoba kansila chunchujila ini chena nranchi dasila bro jamso sudo yana nranchi dagu eske marse chero
That's all.
diploma te edi tarang imbi sonjido.
So it's just like we have covered earlier that saying that rely upon the teacher who is like the sky converting the earth. That it actually talks about the teacher's quality. So do not slip it over other teachers, it says, since you do not have to read the root texts and their commentaries and mark their corresponding passages. You do not have a lot of work.
Also, people in Lagro, Janso Trilogian, Gojo Chumaima, Bonds.
So we have a saying, the Tibetan have a saying that the ocean is just next to you. The ocean is, since the ocean is nearby you, why you have to, soften, why you have to soften your the leather boat, the boat that made out of yak skin, and this is the boat that we use in Tibet by slivers, because you don't have to use the sliver to, in other words, to soften the leather, the boat. So because the ocean is nearby, that is what it's.
Did you taking it go to Tata Deva, taking ditch, she is on it. That Shara is in edge. Some Maja Pada Nila Sawa me, Sanjana, Sawa yin songs, Kama be shene. Then also get to the answer soon do it.
So then here it says, Sharwa said, until you become a Buddha, your studies are not finished. They are finished when you are Buddha. This is, again, our teachers would often tell us this. You have to study until you become Buddha.
Kama be shene, sonda. Chushena shego, amare, shichugo ale. Chushena shichugo shena, Rani Nyan Roa. Ding nye tu are ding nye tu nyuala jonye. Neten to shena shichugo sene che. Chu neten to shena shego. Setun de la Mazoba tenjo ji ange machuba shewa. Toba jima che to shanyang to san gamba pola megoba sheba gamba ale sheba pola go nyamba ne cheba po la ditendo yi nyeche gamba po kwana la go sons de
So then here, the Kamapa says, some say when you practice the teachings, what need is there to know? What need is there of knowledge, and they degenerate. This idea is a real danger for those of us who have studied little. Others say, if you really try, you do not need knowledge. This is very dangerous. If you are making a big effort to the teachings, knowledge is required. Since it is not completed in this brief lifetime, you must resolve. I will study continually through my lifetimes without interrupting the course in a succession of lives, having leisure and opportunity. Something that meditators do not need to study, only those who explain the teachings do. But those who explain the teachings and do not study merely run the risk of sinning. And well, it is precisely the meditators who must study to avoid straying from the path.
가르치는 해거래서는 생애 용거래스 생애 용버데 내가 저 투바 뉴뉴 도서를 쇼년 첨보래스 투바 자 첨보면은 최셔를 해거 말을 생애데 유행 인연 같이 첨보래 기시되려나 아니 다라니 인연에 냥도로 다 라지리 제 거거지는 매로.
So in order to engage in the proper practice, we have to have the vast listening of the teachings. One must listen to the vast listen to the vast teachings, in other words. Without listening to the vast teachings and having a little listening to the teachings, the very limited teachings that you may have listened, then one may claim that just listening a little bit is more than enough for one's practice. So which is something that it talks about that is a little dangerous.
How about the Netindishana Shichuguseagin?
So then particularly that we might say why we have to put in a lot of effort to go through all those learnings and studies.
Take nepa Netindishana nepa the Gore, Karasana, when the Mazo, Tenjogi, Lutengi, Setong, the Luten della, Luten Geman, Tenjoji, Luten Tagi, Panchi Jigurmato, Luten Nipa de Luisiana Gelesona, Ange Tubari, Janka Tubari Sondoa, Janga Matuba Jigore Sondoa.
So here now it says, we have to put in effort, So we have to put in efforts. It says that if you are making a big effort at the teachings, knowledge is required, right? And since it is not completed in this brief lifetime, the life that leisure and life with endowed with the leisure and opportunity that we have at this time, it is brief. So we must resolve. I will study continually, thorough many lifetime without interrupting the succession of lives, having leisure and opportunity.
Gamba Polo go Mare, any Chushepa Polo Goresalana, Zawani and Tigu Mare, any Gamba Polo go Conare Sondoa.
So here then some something that meditators do not need to study. Only those who explain the teachings do, which is completely wrong. It really needs to the meditators.
Takadambe, Lama Soye, and Chu Casa Ganja Balere, Chunyan Chabala, Sheba, Tuba Ketchevich, etc.
So this is actually, in short, the Kadamba teachers are emphasizing that in order to meditate, one need to listen to the teachings, to know the teachings of the Dharma.
Teta Dubala, Shirada, the Ju, Tuba met the Mirunwala, but Chimbo near Gote, Tajamuchi, near Gote. They are Yane to use a sheer gown gobala, nearby Maniana, Shindo Wonka, Sondoa.
So here then Lama Tsongkhapa says, thus you must be convinced that wisdom and the study that causes it are indispensable for proper practice. Moreover, unless you reach certainty about the need for analytical meditation, when you practice, you will have a very hard time getting anywhere.
This was a Janoa. Knowledge is a Shega Google Mare, go patelling a Pachimaniana, and Tuba Momo go Mare said, Rashu Hegro.
So then it is, well, if you say that in order to practice Dharma, it doesn't require more studies. Then if it doesn't require more study, then it doesn't require more listening to the teachings and so forth will come. So those are, something that need to be abandoned as a true practitioners.
And the Shindunga, drop to be the Nzimba, Shige Chang, Yanejum, Hondo Sama, Dambagmus, Mindoa, Jarundawa Shitu, Casa Kone Wonche. They Jinse Jaranya the Sanjawala, Drupago, Sanje Tembala, Tupago, She Tembala, Pembatan, Drupa Shibani, Soso Zimbi, Poche Chambo, Gandon.
Even some will regard scholars of the scriptural collections claim that understand study to be either a mere preliminary to practice or to be background support, like mountains at the back of the valley, but not the actual instructions. For these reasons, you need practice to quickly attain Buddhahood and study to benefit the Buddha's teachings. This is contradictory nonsense. They are just okay. That's
대체
Myanmar,
다
Mount Earth.
주바다 시바니 카칼라 자네 아니 주바제 단다기 몸보 투바 생인데 담바기 혼로 상지 작대 상지 레마도 냥래기 뉴도 상지와라 주바 거리 주바라 투바 몸보 거마레 상지제 땜바 빼와다 상지 땜바 팬통에 지나 투바 몸보 거리에서는 되니기 넘버셔 인터넷 겐데리 소에
So this is what is contradictory. It says, understand the study to be either mere preliminary to the practice or to be the background or support, or like a mountains at the back of the valley, but not the actual instructions. For this reason, you need practice to quickly attain Buddhahood and study to benefit the Buddha's teachings. This is contradictory and nonsense. That is what it meant.
가와마테 에지도아다 템발로 롱게 템바탄 두베 템바 니레 메라 나마네 두바 실루 셰바 인신 셰마네 셰나 라레라 깨와 인베 두바 마노와시 셰나 데니 텐제제 초 인비 셰당 두비 템바 마노완 젬바 롱게 템바 마노와 고알라 라레비 셔로 어서.
So now here it says there are just two kinds of teachings as a scripture and the teachings that has been put into practice. The former makes known the procedures of procedures for practice, and the latter is assimilating the practice after you have understood the procedures. Therefore, doing the practice without error is the best way to uphold the teachings. Moreover, unwillingly upholding the teachings in the sense of practice depends upon unerring understanding of scriptural teachings.
아니 론도도베 가르 당제데 덴지시오 마시오 두바시오 코나인세데 괜히 제소와인소나 때때라 맹이 차로 지도 많이 차로 가제.
So this for practitioners, we need the both scriptural collections, scriptural knowledge, and as well as the practice. Whatever the scriptural knowledge that one may have gained must put to the practice. This too is very necessary, because in the Abhidharma, where it's stated that it says there are two kinds of the teachings as scriptural teachings and has been put it into practice. Those are the two kinds of scriptures, teachings of the Buddha. So therefore, these two must go hand in hand, without which will not be able to reach anywhere.
디가데 데니 텐지 초인 세대로 두바시오 마지가 텐지 시보 코나인 세대 텐지 지주버선 간제질은 문제 거잖아 농기 템바 아니 시 두비 템바 라네 동에질라 텐지 지주버선 라고래 지 체란촌은 가서 라마 타와다 미용에 계셔 말에 아니 텐지 진양의 정인선은 텐지 지주버다 말에.
So here therefore it says someone who is able to study the scriptural teachings and has been put into the practice is said to be the upholder of the teachings of the Buddha, not necessarily the monastic ordained members, but anyone who is actually listening and studying the scriptural collections of the teachings, and whatever the teachings, the collection of teachings that one may have received, is put it into practice. And such individual is said to be the true holder of the teachings of the Dharma.
되지. 먼저 이제 뭔가지는 이제 때코로 다스게 라마리 지 개개인에서 돼서 뭔가 용코로는 세대 천지자서 라요로. 용코로 천지자서 여서나 강사 게소소기 쇼바트는 때는 아니 강사 데이터 텔레 카톤에마도 용지발로 카톤에 맹이지 용로 투바 모바인 하고 그러. 대면나 강사 지기 쇼바기 중요 매보서 했더니 용식으로.
So here it is, vast learning and listening of the scriptural teachings is something that is very, very important. Without which, then we will not be able to understand the qualities of the teacher and qualifications of the teachers and so forth. So therefore, uh, we need to receive the vast teachings from the verse learned teachers, so that we will also become a verse learner and become a real practitioners, so that your practice is not just limited to one chapter, but rather you know everything that you can practice.
Quand dubi ne teni la tusan sha gobe shorewa masoyi langji chayon so zobe shanse le tombo yi nyane langji rimba re la ngeba ten gola loyi tu chuna tesan la gongsu shu loyi tu chewa tombo chunya gongbe chewa suyi se langji rimba teni jeje su tangwe soro tang gongje jima Jimmy Tangche Jene Roye Sun to Tuba, Mare Su to Tuba Zemo Goso, also the Roja.
So there are just scriptural teachings and scriptures. And here's the teachings as scripture and the teachings that has been put into practice. The former makes known as the procedure for the practice, and the latter is assimilating the practice after you have understood the procedures. Therefore, doing the practice without error is the best way to uphold the teachings. Moreover, unearningly, upholding the teachings in the sense of practice depends upon the unearning understanding of the scriptural teachings. Therefore, it is not right to forget what you have studied at the time of practice. You must first know many teachings and then put their very meaning into practice. When the time comes to do so, even if you do not understand the teachings from the outset, you do not discourage, but strive to study them in accord with your mental capacities as much as feasible, and whether that be a little or a lot. You do not study, do not make study and practice into separate things. Rather, the very thing that you practice must be exactly what you first study and then reflect upon. So beginning bodhisattvas must depend on the certainty on the single procedure of the path, and practice that is not based towards one side, but is complete in all aspect of the path. When their mental capacity is small, they engage in the conditioning themselves to just this process of study followed by practice.
되게 라자 간데르잖아. 아니 동보 소소 년에 강 해봐 되니 제지마 샤소. 년에 지체는 그여야 봐 제시오스. 계시 동보 라니 이해가 매는데 년에 두고 매나요. 투서 제지라 로커쇼 봐 제시오스에 린세 동보지.
So whatever the practice, whatever the teachings that one may have received, one should put all this in practice. That is what is meant. And but if one is unable to engage in the practice, the entire teachings that you may have received, one should not remain disheartened, but rather one should take whatever the teachings that we may have received as something that can be practiced in accord with one's mental capacities.
Gang to be lost to question and dig a penangazo, Shenya, Tombo Sosogalan, Larita, Timbiton, and Yane Chengina, Tombo Shenya Tensi Yukola, any Gang to but any Shenya Tensi Ganja Biche, any Tenima Chandra, the Landra, any Tamigis, the Melobis Sonju Pada, any Gang to be any Gambits and Yane Jena, Sondet and Robbery, so I tell.
So here now, whatever the teachings that you have received, one should try to practice and meditate in a proper sequence in the context of this great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the Lam Rim practice. The practice begins from the meditating on the reliance upon the proper reliance upon a spiritual guidance or spiritual teachers, followed by then taking refuge in three jewels and reflecting upon the karmas and its effects, and all the way to the state of unity or state of enlightenment, in other words. So all of this, must be practiced in an orderly manner.
So, sure, Masuma, any Chayosu Zobala, any Lokasho, any Bounty, any Logi took Gang, you but in Yanacha, any Yajedosona, any Kamagamala, portion, Yanazona, any Logi Kumbate, any Rashinchi, competent over so.
So then, one should not, practice partially. One should practice all in unison. Whatever the teaching that you may have received, one should try to practice this in a very, sequential order in unison, not just in other words, in complete form, not just a partial practice.
That's what I'm going to here in a Tasaki hit and London. Kachinaire, Tasaki hit Payudone, any Ganja Bikola, the Chuluka Tanijila, and Ganja Chesadovis, then the Sonja, Tenaki Chagris Soda, John Chemon, Drake, Kaya, but the Nikin, and Rosona, Ganja just Mengasu the Segama Sonda.
So if one has really, studied the vast teachings or the text, then most, it doesn't require for you to, find a meditator instruction for your meditations, because you already have the instructions that you have studied.
So pen Nanga Chambore, Sima Jeromuchin Ripa the Nansha, the Chumchumala, Chichamato, Chigamari, Jumabi the Sora Bunde, Sondu. To the Namchi Jason Ramba, Simi Jason Rabi Camero. What's a Katusha?
Lama Tsongkhapa always emphasized to follow the reasonings. The following reasoning is something that is strongly emphasized by Lama Tsongkhapa, and then following the vast teachings of the Dharma.
Damba Mano, Chatsangshina, Dodijang, Dama Dang, Tiba Kumaki, launching got Tangshi Tsangla, Jabatena, Demba Tada, Dotubashi, Gerbe, Dendashi Mani Bado, Nyanji Shore Tsangla, Joa Niba Siji, Dembi Lu, Yonso Zobi Nyanji, Nela, Nepa Misipe, Dambi Sheda Jola Ten, Kelambi Tsutrin, Tabas Jizon, Damba Yang de Niene, Tinji Jede, Minang, Latanamana, Soa, Tabne, So Sabadan, Juba Jang, Got the money, Jobi, Ju, Chasang, Relambena, Lotte, Dene, Lola, Chepa, Gone, Conde Pevi, Neba Tensuba Jeva, Yeno, Sondo, Ambangaman. Tanji Chebache, Tanyan Jirimba, Loja Segura.
So, if their mental capacity is great although at first small, has become greater through conditioning. They steadily expand upon the very stage of the path they know, and proceeding in connection with all the scriptures and their stainless commentaries. There is no need for them to pursue something else to study beside this. Therefore, if instructions are accurate and complete, then although summarize all of the key points of the sutra and tantra's path, and the path of the higher and the lower vehicles must be uh, must be covered. Once they have been explained at length, you must be able to go through all the teachings until you reach something like this. It is possible to feel delight about just some portion of your practice, but it is impossible to become certain about the key points of the practice for the complete corpus of the teachings. Consequently, rely upon excellent teachers and companions.
용수 조바 생계제나 배나 인대 시제만 라고 제나 랑 용수 조바의 창대열에 제히 접이가라 템바 용수 조바 제히 제토야지지와 용질 차잖아.
So think about, everything the teachings it says, or when you look at the one particular teachings, if you say that this particular teachings encapsulates the entire teachings of the path, including both sutra and tantra and lower and high vehicles. For instance, if you let's talk about the foundation of all good qualities. If you look at that teachings, within a very short verses, that you will see the entire teaching, which encapsulate the entire teachings. In other words, the foundation of all good qualities will serve as a synopsis of the essential meaning of the entire path of the teachings.
다 간사라니 이니 지 로토라 방치 지윤데가라 용수 조바다 방치 지 마투바도 아니 냐내 저야나 쇼레아마도 템바 용조라 네 키바지 용 말에 손도아
rumche enge sunanda
용체 다 용체모라 로종체비 간사 된저지기 용 도디지이나양 동화 용수 조번 제히 저통에 다 베나 현이 된지는 말을 손주주 받은 제히 저 통에 닝에바 땡에바지 마요 봐도 계시 냐내 잖아요 냐내 쇼레 아마도 요거 말이에요 손도아.
So here now, if one is not become until you were able to practice and explain yourself entire path, beginning from the relying upon the proper reliance upon the spiritual teachers and taking refuge in teachers, so forth, all the way to the state of enlightenment. And until you have all this within oneself, then whenever we engage in the practice, our practice will be the portion of the practice. It will not become the complete practice.
된주게 간사 되니게 냥내지 내 상황 요소 좀 셰바 용하나 아니 용 시그 말이 다 용하나 가르쳐 그래서나 아니 담비 시에 된 거래스 아니 수준 넘버 답을 제송 거래스 아니 담바 땜바도 양대양도 강자네 냥내 전에 저 나다나마 예매도 손대 제와이나 아니 로데 제바도 그래서도.
So therefore, then for that, we need to rely upon the teachers, listen to the teachings, and observe all those ethical disciplines and so forth. Nedan the lawyer chiklasha rumshi the king native din ma he take kachi chlad. So let me read this through Rinpoche has finished reading this already, so I have not completed reading. So consequently, rely upon excellent teachers and companions. Make a foundation of the pure ethical discipline to which you commit yourself, and listen again and again to the instructions, and to 4 sessions of meditation, and then sustain the object of meditation and its subjective aspects. after you have met fervent supplication to the deities and gurus, strive at all costs of gaining from many perspectives in accumulating the collections and purifying obscurations. If you do this, you will become profoundly certain that good qualities in your mind will steadily improve, as the former excellent being says.
ni shadela pene ni jene ne omi tobani esena tanga choge zepaten senare kanje tenjiji ni jela ka yose choko mo den zebarwa.
So think about, if you look at the Lama Tsongkhapa's stories or his biographies, even though Lama Tsongkhapa has gone through all those vast learnings and received all kind of teachings, in order for him to have to study and understand the complete teachings of the Buddha Dharma, he went for a retreat for a very long time. And in a common appearance, it is to say that Lama Tsongkhapa has achieved his middle way view, or the view of middle way during the retreats. And this is how Lama Tsongkhapa has actually become a treasure of all the teachings of Dharma.
So
this is how Lama Tsongkhapa stated that the yogi, I have undertaken such practice. Those of you who long to achieve liberation must do the same.
아니 집에 터라 아니 다 기신년 댄시 수준하고 다 버셔서면 하다나마다 소화단에 차서나 아니 로이 거베는 로를 써도.
So therefore, as Lama Tsongkhapa has stated that you must learn and understand in accord with one's mental capacities, and then again here, if you know the one portion of the teachings, one should not be satisfied. One should not be contented by knowing the one portion of the studies of one portion of the teachings of the Dharma, but you can then again extend your teachings, your learning furthermore, and this is how one is able to encapsulate all the teachings right from the beginning all the way to the state of enlightenment. So then once you are able to gain all this knowledge and understand the teachings, and then you will be able to explain yourself. It doesn't necessarily explain to others. You are able to explain to yourself, this is how you begin your practice. And what you should be done in the middle, and what you should be done at the end, and so forth, all the way to the state of enlightenment. If you're able to go through that, and you're able to explain yourself by heart to yourself, then one should not seek. It is not necessary for you to seek for any meditation, the teacher of meditations. In other words, meditative teachers. So this is how Lama Tsongkhapa stated. Then he said, then what the most important part is to really to observe the ethical discipline. One should have the be a morally impeccable being. In other words, morally impeccable being, and then supplicate to the deities and the gurus, will then enable you to develop your spiritual realizations.
당초 제 강접的当样的那他的那么说的错设这些样的结果也这样这个电影不多是吧刚讲别给我嘛的错设这些给讲电过我的生活的啊生活
So with this, it also it indicates that just mere meditation alone is not adequate. That is and also not only the single pattern meditation also or the analytical meditation alone is it's not adequate. It requires the combination of practice of accumulating merits and purifying negativities along with meditations, single pointed and analytical meditations will enables one to then achieve our spiritual goal.
他把这下给就是如此
We'll
근데
stop
맞아
here with this today.
주선이 다 주선이 세브라 뒤에는 아니 친해 때가 뒤기 처음에 뒤선도 사베 교환은 쇼지도 담에 털어대네 근데 돈이 또베 로당 네 상추게 생각을 전에 라지 선제 단지 땐도 되와라 응고니 바 지전에 샤워 네 시에님 바양 네 되는 쇼베 네 남았었던 집안은 신도로 신조로도 수로서네 뭐하나 뭐하니 어쩌다
So let's do our dedication prayers. By means of engaging in the practice of accumulating merits for 2 hours of time, and also combining all those merits that we have accumulated in the past, future, and present. By the power of those merits, may I achieve the wisdom realizing emptiness and bodhicitta, and may I be able to establish entire sentient beings to the state of ultimate happiness. May all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions please bless me to be able to do this.
有就就是老面故事朝代起，那个陈的说句结不动，罗藏点别正面上松的，若也面色到年就结，光着绕月过夜先光子，偏当的王毛的永远。现在人王的人叫做也，加倍身体不，练就节，加倍抱怨这大千八度，更多上波太阳天见的，得到根据就是道路，给我得到当地超度，就从西边叫我当地。我光荣求得广播的，大仙给月早晚的根章，从不学习劳动。哎呀，多谢，thank you。